Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Presents Elements of Horror. I am Shawn,
And I'm Missy.
and today, Missy, what movie are we doing today?
We're doing Lost River.
Yes, Ryan Gosling, written and directed by Mr. Ryan Gosling. So this is Lost River will be the second movie that we've done on Elements of Horror. That is part of our kind of unofficial, like Detroit themed episodes. The first one being Only Lovers Left Alive. Listeners, if you didn't catch that, it came out about a week and a half ago. You can find that anywhere, wherever podcasts are streamed. But I have a fascination, and I think you do too, with Detroit that draws me to these movies. But I also have a fascination with that era of New York and 42nd Street, the Deuce, and so there is kind of a through line there as far as these are movies like where the location is very much woven deeply into the fabric of the characters, the situations that they're in. I mean, it informs everything about the movie. And Lost River, like 100%, this movie has to take. Now, I know in the movie they don't say it's Detroit, it's called Lost River. It's filmed in Detroit, Michigan. And I mean, goddamn, I've been to Detroit. I don't know if, and we're going full spoiler. So if you haven't seen it, please don't listen to this. Go watch it. If you were to summarize the plot of this movie, of which I feel like there is, I don't know that there's a plot, but if you were to do so for somebody, how would you describe
Oh,
the plot?
actually, I feel like there are two plots. I don't know that I can put the second part into words. You might be able to do that better. Because the movie is kind of divided into two key stories.
Hmm.
Um, and the one I gravitate toward tends to be the one that I see as like an apocalyptic fairy tale, the one where we deal with Bones and his story. So you've got this young man in this abandoned town that we just know as Bully Town. It's abandoned Detroit, and there's no one there. He's pulling copper wiring out of walls to get money to
Yeah.
survive. Um, and this and his story is that he's trying to find a way to get out. He wants to change his fate, and he's willing to fight for it, but he's not sure how to do it. And in the meantime, he's hearing stories about how this place where he lives is cursed. So then he wants to find a way to break the curse. The other story has to do with his mom trying to figure out how to save their home and the seedy club she starts working at. And I mean, I feel like she's that's more the real world. How do we deal with the real world problems and find a way to survive? Whereas her son is literally trying to find a way to fight magic and get out alive.
That's interesting. I never thought of it before that. Yeah, I mean, you're 100% correct. And I mean, insofar as I can tell you, you're correct. But let's say I 100% agree. We Ryan Gosling might be like, you're both wrong about
Right.
capitalism, but I doubt that. Um,
I doubt it.
but I guess in a way it's about capitalism. But I never thought of the fact that like all of us, like so you and I are definitely like this, where we have to balance the real world with the world in our head, right?
Right.
And I feel like we both skew towards putting more im importance on the world in our head than the real world.
I
And this,
think that's true of both of us.
yeah,
And that would also be true of Bones, the
yes,
the leading man in the story.
yes. And I didn't think of it before, but it is almost like an allegory of childhood where, I mean, he's not that young, but he is still in childhood and his mother is an adult. So his mother is dealing with the real world stuff, and he's dealing with something equally important. And in the end, you can read it as he's the one that breaks the curse, and then they get out, right?
Right.
I mean, so
He
it's
wins.
like, yeah, he wins. And so the magic or whatever, and in no way do they ever refer to it as magic, really. They do say curse. Rat calls it a curse or whatever. She's the one that kind of convinces him about that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I never thought of that kind of like very clinical dichotomy of where that's a lot of our lives and that's their life exactly. He's dealing with the kind of more spiritual aspect of things, and she's dealing with like she's dealing with pentacles, and he's dealing with what, like cups or um swords
Cups or wands.
or wands. Yeah, sorry, swords would definitely be.
No, I think the mother would be dealing with pentacles and swords because she's dealing with trying to find the truth.
That's really interesting, and there's no overt magical imagery in the movie. There's no tarot cards. There's no um really any. I mean, as far as when he breaks the curse, uh it's not like he uses like a mortar and pestle and like draws a pentagram or lights candles or whatever. It's completely. But also, I like that because that adds to that area is so enchanted because it's being reclaimed by the earth. So it almost reminds me in a way of like, this is maybe a stretch, but if you go back to like fucking King Arthur, like expansionism of this empire that eventually like leads to Britain and the Picts up north where Merlin hailed from, and they're kind of more magical, like nomad, earthy based, and so it's almost like that. It's like expansionism in this case has stopped because this city is dead and dying and being reclaimed. And yet there's still things like we'll get to, like Ben Mendelsohn is sweeping up and shutting the lights off on the capitalism there, kind of like closing down, foreclosing houses, and firing people at the bank and whatever. And at the same time, he's setting up his own little things that, while capitalism is very much rooted in like something way more like primal and dark. So the whole movie is just a wash in all of this kind of conflict between the spiritual and the earthly. So I really like this tarot metaphor.
Yeah, I think it works. It works well, and it's actually I love this movie, but I've always had a little bit of a problem with the the mom story. I just wanted more of the other one,
Hmm.
the um, Bones's story, because he's basically a knight on a quest,
Yeah,
going to break a curse and
kill a dragon.
right face the break the curse and kill a dragon, and the mom is dealing with like trying to save their house and shady loans from the bank, and it just never felt like it connected. Like
Hmm.
how the two stories seem so opposite, it was kind of hard for me to meet in the middle.
Okay.
But if it makes more it makes a little more sense to me now why he would have also included, because there are points where they almost feel like different movies because the voice is so drastically different. But maybe he was trying to create balance and show both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and Billy. So
Billy.
Bones's mom is played by Christina Hendricks. Bones is Ian DeCasticker. Rat is, I cannot say her name.
Saoirse Ronan.
Okay, Saoirse Ronan. Um, Bully is Matt Smith. Ben Mendelsohn is Dave. Eva Mendes is Kat.
All the characters in Bones' story have they don't have real grown-up names.
Yeah, that's very
It's
true,
all
actually. Yes.
Bones, Bully, Rat, Face.
But it's interesting because Billy's story starts very rooted in pentacles, right? She has to go to the bank. She's got to deal with Dave. they start out in this bank and he's got a button-up shirt and a tie on, and it's all very bank, very pentacles. And but once she kind of like goes into his realm, and he's like, "Oh, I got a job a suggestion for you." And she goes to that club, and he explains, like, I've been to, I don't know how many Lost Rivers in the last like couple years, and whenever I go into it, and he's already said he goes into these towns to streamline the banks, foreclose everything. Like that's their conversation at the bank. Like he showed up, he fired the guy that gave her the bad loan. He doesn't really give a shit. He's just crunching numbers, and he says this wonderful thing. He says, "We all got to do the shimmy shimmy yeah. This ain't like this ain't who I am. I got my own hustle," or however he says that. I love the shimmy shimmy yeah. And once she goes into his world, it's the cover of the movie is that image of, I don't know what the fuck you would call it's like a doorway that is a beast's mouth, right? And
It
that's the
looks like it looks like imagery for old like carnivals, like
yeah, like
the
the
Tunnel of
tunnel.
Love.
Yes, exactly. So okay, I'm glad you said that. I wasn't sure if I was wrong. I was like, tunnel of love, is that
That's
right?
what it always makes me think of.
Okay,
It looks
okay.
like a big tunnel of love, and you've got um bones in the boat.
Yeah. Uh but in that club, and I forgot when I've seen it. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. Let's say this was like the third or fourth time I've seen it. I always forget that when they go to the club at first, it starts out where it seems like it's some kind of burlesque or something, and then the woman on stage, Eva Mendes, gets like fucking stabbed, and there's blood, and it's like this weird like slasher burlesque where like she's not actually killed. It's all effects. But
Theatrics.
I'm like, fuck, I want to go to this place. Are you serious? This is amazing. And his domain, I feel like, is less pentacles and more, I don't even know what. It's like, is this what comes after capitalism? Like he sets up these little things and these people work for him, and I don't know how happy they are, right? When you go, you get that weird burlesque upstairs, and then when you go downstairs, you get this. I mean, it's almost like something out of a fucking Panos Cosmatos movie where there's that first shot where when Eva Mendes first takes Christina Hendricks down there, it's just lavender. You can't see what because it's like a close up on the wall or something. So it just looks like you're swimming in lavender, and then slowly you see them walking down this hallway, and the fucking image kind of congeals, right? And then she
Right.
introduces her to the room with the shells, which we'll get into. It's so like
Creepy.
where are we? This is in this town?
Right. And I think that's where my disconnect with it, with that part of the story comes from. Like, um, I mean, everything about that club is unsettling. It is not a place I want to go to. I want to go find the crazy underwater city. I don't want to go
Yeah.
to the creepy club with the shells at all. Um, but they are kind of creating their own world in there. It's not like anything that we're familiar with.
No.
And I mean, everything they do in the club, I mean, we find out later that they're not killing Eva Mendes on stage, but at first it looks like it.
Yeah.
And that club is all about presenting you with lies and can you see through it? Because I mean, there's even when we go back to the shells, they tell her that they're safe, and it's definitely not. It is not safe.
Well, it's not safe if the person who is if your patron is the guy that owns it because he has basically the
That's true.
garage door opener, right?
The
So,
clicker thing, right, to open it.
oh, that's a scene. I love that scene
Ugh.
so much.
Those shells are like the creepiest thing ever.
Yeah, they're pretty. I mean,
They're
and I
creepy.
don't mean I want to go to that part of the club. I would
You
just
want to
this.
go to the
Yeah,
burlesque horror show, which is kind of cool.
it's pretty cool, right? Like you would totally go there. Like, oh, it's like a slasher, like I don't know. It's just very cool. I don't know if there's like a secret password to get to the, but man, that God, it is just such a strange when they go into that thing with the shells, which by the way is cut in the climactic moments. Her in the shell with Mendelsohn there trying to get in is
And Bones at the Lost City.
and going yeah going underneath. And so when I first saw this movie, I remember it was like later at night, and I was probably fucked up, and I was it was in my old pad in Redondo Beach, and I think Kirsten was asleep, and I'm watching it. Well, I'm watching in our room, so we used to have a TV in the bedroom in there, and I'm like watching this, and there's the first time he goes out to that sunken place. He gets on the raft and he brings it like I don't know if it's like a fish tank or something, and he holds it so he can look underwater, basically.
It's a fish tank. It's a fish aquarium.
Okay. And it basically functions like goggles when you're underwater, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except he doesn't have to submerge himself. And you see these passing, like he's kind of looking around, you don't know what you're looking at, and there's this one shot. And I remember like, oh, what the fuck was that? Like what? Because this is also like the first time I watched it, I didn't know what this movie was, right? I
Right.
didn't know where it was going or anything. So I was like, oh my God, is there like a fucking like a lake monster? And
Yeah, you get a glimpse of the shadow of what
oh,
looks like a dragon or some kind of big monster, sea creature, whatever. You don't get much of a look at it. It's very quick,
very quick.
but it's enough to make you lean closer to the screen, waiting to see more.
Yeah. And so then we get back to the night slaying the dragon, right? The way he breaks the curse is he actually goes down there with a fucking hacksaw and saws the head off the brontosaurus, which I so that first time I had completely glossed over the fact that they've told us before you get to that, they tell you twice that the town that they flooded for the reservoir had a um like a prehistory theme park with dinosaurs. Well, they don't say dinosaurs, but they say like our prehistoric theme park or whatever. So of course,
Oh, I forgot about that.
yeah, it's in
I
that like weird infomercial thing, and it's not an infomercial,
that
like the
movie that
yeah the
she
educational film that Rat
has.
plays for.
Yeah, I forgot all about that. Um, I just remember her saying that in order to break the curse, you have to bring something from the city back.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, and it's not specified what it has to be, but he saws the head off of this dinosaur or dragon that is underwater, and then uses it to slay another monster, which
yeah,
is everything about the Bone story. I just love, and that's when we really get a good look at this at Bully Town where they live,
yeah,
and it's just it. And when we're dealing with his story, everything the colors are amazing.
yeah,
Everything is so like they're filming Detroit, and it's all like desolate and abandoned, but it's in like Technicolor.
yeah,
So the colors, the greenery, and then the blue sky, everything pops and makes it feel more dreamy. And then everything about that half of the story, it has that dreamy element to it that I like so much. And it kind of makes you wonder if Detroit is like, is I mean, is it really that empty to the point where, I mean, they're pulling wires out of walls to get money and that kind of thing, or is that just a bully town?
That's a good question. I think that's a fairly common thing. I don't, it might not still be like that, but I know that was like post Katrina New Orleans. There were elements of that. Because that's an easy
Okay.
way to for people. I knew a dude in LA that would do, he'd like when we stripped at work a building that we bought and converted, and when they did that, he was like always asking my boss, like, can I take the copper? Can I take the copper? But the guys that were doing the construction had already worked out a deal. So there's this kind of like beef between these guys because they're like, the owner was like, no, they're taking the copper. And then this guy's like, no, what the fuck? I want to just get some copper. But he would tell me that he would go wherever the fuck he lived. He would go and like, him and his buddies would sometimes go to abandoned houses and like rip copper out of the walls and stuff like that. Cause you could turn it in at I don't know, the fucking junkyard or
Junkyard.
whatever. Yeah. Um, that's a thing. There's certain things about the movie also that for me that dovetail with another one of my favorite movies, which is Harmony Korine's Gummo. Very different movies, but there is that greenery over like dilapidation, that kind of reclamation feel at times in Gummo. And then it's this what people do to survive, right? Like the one cat is like putting broken glass or rat poison in tuna fish to kill cats to sell to the local butcher, and then Tumblr and Solomon are also killing cats to sell to the grocery store. um, and it's a little bit like the whole Bones taking the copper, and then fucking. Can we talk about Matt Smith for a minute?
All right, I am not a Doctor Who fan. I have seen
Nor I.
Matt Smith in two movies, and in both of them, he's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
And
Last Night in
I'm
Soho being the other one, right?
right. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that those are the same things you know him from, because I don't think you do Doctor Who either.
I've seen like an episode or two. I don't know if I've ever seen one of his. I don't like Doctor Who, so it's completely, and like I guess he's
Yeah,
in
it's not my
Morbius.
thing either.
I will never see that. I there's something I've seen him in something else. I don't know what else. Oh, the his house movie on Netflix. He had a small part in that. I feel like there was something. Anyway, whatever.
Okay,
Um, he's terrifying, right?
terrifying. And yeah, every time he's on screen, he steals the show. But I don't know if it's. I mean, part of it is his facial expressions, the way he moves. Like he's very intimidating, even though he's not a big person.
Yeah,
Like he just looks like he wants to rip your throat out with his teeth in this movie.
yeah.
And and when we deal with when he meets Nick the rat, that is just
Oh,
heartbreaking. Yeah,
that's a
he's so good. Everything about him is so good. And when I mean, so you've got this great bully driving around Bully Town in this car that looks like it with a seat mounted on the back that looks like it came out of Escape from New York
yeah,
on on a bullhorn screaming at people, this is my town, and if I catch you stealing anything from my town, you're gonna pay for it. Welcome to Bully Town. And everybody just scatters like cockroaches
yeah.
as soon as they hear him.
And he has completely. I feel like I mean I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan or whatever, but I feel like this is a common thing in those kind of stories where like you have a community and like the dragon or the evil wizard comes to town, and it just that whatever the community was, that's not what it is anymore. Now they run the show and everybody's afraid. And so to continue with that knight slaying the dragon metaphor, because Bones does eventually use the severed head of the Brontosaurus statue, aka the dragon, to kill Bully, to beat the real dragon, as you said. Um,
Right.
but it is so this town is called Lost River, but it's not anymore. It is literally Bully Town. It's spray painted everywhere. He fucking drives up and down the streets, like you said, telling people this is Bully Town. This is my town. Everybody and everything in it is mine. Nobody confronts him. And in fact, when Bones goes to sell the copper, the guy that takes the copper is like, you can't be doing this, man. Because he
Right.
knows,
I'm not going to buy from you because I don't
yeah,
want to
Bully's
be
gonna cut my fucking lips off, let alone, like I don't want to see it happen to you, but you do what you do, I'll do me. No.
the only people who stand up to him are Bones and Rat
Yeah.
because she faces him to protect Bones, even though she's terrified and even though it costs her someone else she loves.
Yeah, that is I I remember because I told you about this movie, right?
You did. I had never heard of it. And when you did tell me about it, you just told me it was one of your favorite movies and to just watch it. So I knew nothing about it at all.
I was worried about it, telling you about it because the rat scene is rough. So if you're listening to this, you've seen the movie and you obviously have some degree, I feel like you probably like the movie or are baffled by the movie or whatever. But, you know, like I don't believe in trigger warnings. But I don't like to see like I would rather see people killed than animals killed.
Most
And
horror fans would. I mean,
yeah,
that's not an unusual thing with us. I mean, Joe Bob showed that movie with Jodie Foster and then was immediately blitzed with Darcy getting drowning in messages about did the hamster die when
oh yeah,
Martin Sheen threw it at a wall
I forgot
and they
about
didn't
that.
even show it. You just heard it squeak and all the mutants freaked out.
I forgot all about that.
I
And I mean,
mean, when it
obvious,
comes to animal stuff, I mean, I'm cool with trigger warnings. Um, and again, they don't just like that. It's more insinuated. You don't actually see what happens, but your imagination fills it in, and it sucks.
but I mean,
Like,
it's they obviously don't kill the actual rat, but
right,
the way they film it, your mind does fill it in, but you do see the scissors working on its neck, and you do then see her holding the severed head in the body. So
right,
it is more graphic than like for instance like the little girl that lived down the lane like you were just saying.
right,
Um, but it is not a real animal harmed. It's still difficult to watch. So I was a little worried about that, but I had a feeling that like me, who also doesn't like that, the rest of the movie and the fact that the animal's not actually harmed may
right.
you know it's fine. It's not.
It's fine. It's fine, and the movie it's definitely worth it. I mean, if for listeners, if that's a trigger, like you can skip through it and just know what happened. That Bully kills Rat's rat friend Nick.
Yeah,
um, because I mean, you hear all the sounds, and I think that's what
yeah,
makes it so unnerving. Is
yes,
you hear the squeaking and the scissors, and it's traumatizing. I was
yeah,
traumatized by the death of Nick the rat, but the movie's definitely worthwhile. Um, it the whole thing is about just loss of innocence and facing your demons and like how far will you how much will you fight for what you love.
well said.
And I guess that's true of Billy's story too. At least how much will you fight to save what you love.
Yeah,
Maybe that's how it ties together. But the other thing that's interesting about her story is like she's going through, I mean, she's working at this shady creepy club and doing all these things that kind of make her question her morals, but she's trying to save her home. But why? There's nothing there. It's part of Bully Town. Everybody's leaving. She's signed herself into this loan. She's gotten involved with with Dave, who's just the worst human being alive. And she's trying to save her home so she can have a life for her kids, but there's nowhere to work. You have to deal with bully. You like Bones has the right idea. It's time to get out. It's past time to get out.
I love that. I always think it's the opening scene, but it's not. The opening scene is like the footage of Bones and Frankie, his very younger brother, kind of playing around. That first scene where it's the neighbor moving, and the neighbor's like, packing up the U-Haul truck and closing the door and just talking to him. He's like, it's just, there's nothing left. I got to go. Everybody's leaving. Like, get out while you can. And he says something like, "I love you. I'll never forget you." And he gets in the truck and drives
Mm-hmm.
away. And I just always thought that was just such a wonderful way. I don't know. I really, really like that a lot. There's some like very genuine human interaction in this movie that just kind of sneaks in here or there. Billy and the cab driver, there's stuff like that. Um,
Bones and Rat.
Bones and Rat, and that's more like that's very pronounced because it's part of the story, right? But I mean, not to, you're definitely right, but there's these other kind of little interactions that pepper it and give you more of a sense of this community beyond the main characters. But I love, oh man, it's funny what you said about Billy trying to save this house. And at some point, I think Dave says like, or somebody says like, why? And she's like,
I
that's
think Bones asks her at some point why, because he wants to leave.
where I grew up. But it's our home. And really, you got to think it's like, you want your kids living here, really?
Right, where they have to be afraid every day that you know they're going to cross a bully in some way and he's going to cut their lips off,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
like Face, who's wandering around town looking like, I mean, looking like he had his lips cut off.
oh. There's a scene in the convenience store where Bones is hiding and Rat kind of takes the bullet and checks out and then walks outside, like deters, Bully and Face's attention. But Face at one point like leans down or something, you just see this stream of drool. And I just think of Arseface from the Preacher comics where there was
Yeah,
a perpetual stream of drool. And it's like, of course he's drooling all the time. He's got no fucking lips. Like his boss or whatever you want to call him just cut his fucking lips off for like no reason.
right. For something that Bully decided he felt was wrong, but I don't remember what his wrongdoing was.
He just says you
It
let him go.
certainly it certainly wasn't bad enough to cut his half his face off.
No, and well, it's that scene. It's the ramification of the scene where they catch him stealing the copper, and it's like Bones emerges. I think they're by the zoo, and then Bully is like way over yonder on I don't know what he's on, like a second story porch or a roof or something. And he sees him and he starts screaming at him, and Bones takes off, and then Face is closer, so Bully yells at Face to get him, and he chases him through those
Mm,
cages that are all overgrown with grass. Another amazing image.
right.
Because at first I was like, "What the fuck is that?" There's something about all that chain link with like just
Mm-hmm.
like almost shoulder high grass, like just choking it. That's just an unbelievable image to me. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
and then he says later, he's like, "You let him go," and he cuts his lips off.
Okay.
Ugh. I mean, it's almost like to me the film is almost obsessed with lost causes, like lost causes, lost cities, lost childhoods, lost ways of life,
Okay.
unable to let go or move on. So the characters play out these like dramatic pantomimes, and I feel like Bones is really the one that sees this for what it is. Even Rat, I don't know that she totally sees it until she is kind of aligned with Bones, right? And then I feel like that's maybe where she starts to get the strength.
Yeah, and that's when she starts. I mean, when he asks her if she would go with him, that's when she starts actually thinking about,
Yep.
I could have a future.
Yep.
And until then, she was just kind of trapped in stasis with her grandmother.
Yeah. And if you think about it, so they all continue to move inside their little fictional realities until one of them, Bones, actually discovers a dramatic fantasy, this completely drowned like city, right? And so the dinosaur is like the overt metaphor for the creature that no longer exists. But the town, even the drowned town, had built a monument they couldn't let go. It's like everything is just like obsessed with the past.
Right,
And
because they could have drained that drained that city and paved over it, put something else there. They didn't.
well, and maybe that's why that city was drowned anyway, because it's like, what do they have to offer? Like the prehistoric theme park? I mean, we don't know. There could have been something else there, but I just think it's really interesting, and it plays into that whole thing where it's like the spell and having to bring something to the top, and it's like, why didn't you just dive down there and grab like, I don't know, a fucking brick? Like instead of but why? Because he feels like I feel like it is an act of magic. He feels like I'm going to defeat this dragon. I'm going to
Right.
reclaim
I
something
don't
that
want.
matters.
Right. He doesn't want just good enough. I don't want to just get a rock and see if that does it. Like he's all in.
Yeah, he's all in.
And if he's gonna do it, he's gonna do it all the way. So I mean, he definitely does it all the way. He slays the underwater beast and then uses it to bludgeon Bully.
Yeah,
And that showdown with Bully is oh, it's just so good. Every The performances are great.
yeah, they really are.
Every time Bones or Bully are on screen, they're captivating. And when you've got the two of them showing, at either end of the road, Bully's gonna run him over, and then he just launches this dinosaur head into the air. It's such a bizarre movie.
It is. It's very. There's a definite like. I feel like as a kind of a David Lynch obsessive. I like. I was just bound to love this movie.
Yeah, it definitely has Lynchy vibes to it. I mean, it tells very much its own story, but it definitely has some Lynchy undertones.
Yeah. God,
Especially when you get down to the shells in the basement, like that feels like something
yes.
out of a Lynch.
Yeah.
I mean, the club, the I feel more of the Lynchy stuff when we're in the club, but I don't know. There's just some the imagery. The imagery in this movie is very unique. I've never seen anything like those shells before, and the idea of strapping a person into it. So I don't even know what the purpose is. I mean, are they actually supposed to like have sex with the shells?
Man, Eva Mendes when she shows it to Billy, and Eva Mendes doesn't seem like I was trying to kind of read her character this time more, and like, is she like a bad person? I can't really get a handle on it, but she kind of like, oh, it's safe, and as long as it's locked, they're just gonna work out their frustrations. And I'm like, so is this like the next step from like a peep show, where it's like you're actually,
I guess.
I, but work out frustration. So do they also like, what is it like? I mean, the mind kind of recoils with images of like men either like punching the shell or like God, like fucking jerking off or like I don't know I do know that Ben Mendelsohn can cut a fucking rug, man. I will say, I
I don't
think
know. There's
about,
something malicious about that dance scene.
oh, there is for sure, but
It's so uncomfortable.
I have thought about since the first time I saw that movie, the way that he dances, I just there's something about it. It just enthralls me. Like it is the weirdest. Like I just don't know.
Okay.
It's threatening and it's like drunken and it's irreverent and it's maybe trying to be sexy, but in like a threatening way. But there's nothing overtly threatening about the way he's moving his body. It's just so.
It, but it feels pretty fucking threatening.
Oh
No, he always feels very threatening to me. And his excellent performance from Ben Mendelsohn, but he is everything about him is just easy and uncomfortable and untrustworthy. His character, rather, not him. Um, Dave.
yeah. Oh, so sleazy.
Even when he's acting like he's trying to be nice, he's trying to be helpful. Like he's not. Like I know it's come up in conversation before. Like when you're
Yeah.
I don't belong here. This is a bad path. I shouldn't do this thing. Like it. You feel it. She feels it, but she
Yeah,
does it
she feels
anyway.
it.
She wants to she wants to save her house. Um and he's trying to come off as helpful and non-threatening, but he feels threatening from the moment he walks into the room in the bank.
I don't think he's trying to feel non-threatening. I think I he toes an interesting line because he's kind of a good cop, bad cop in the same body where like, when he first sits down, she starts talking to him. The first thing he does is basically just fucking piss on everything she just said, where she goes through this whole, her whole story. And then he's like, yeah, see, I can't really hear out of this here. So like, well, everything you just said, all I heard was like it's such a fucking dick move. It's just, oh my God. And then he comes around, he's kind of hell. And then, he's then when he does the shimmy shimmy yeah, like he kind of gets like there's a brass tacks, but at the same time he's kind of like, okay, maybe I can help you or whatever. So you're like, okay, maybe he's not a bad guy. And he kind of keeps doing like he's kind of threatening or like shitty, and then he kind of like, oh, but maybe he's not. Maybe he's just actually, helping me out. And then what the scene in the car when he's like, this is what he drops her off after work, and he says, "You're riding with me," so she can't take the taxi home. And then they're sitting in front of the house and you can't invite me in or whatever, blah blah. And then she's, oh, my boys and blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah, I got a problem too. I just like to fuck. And it's like such a weird, like threatening, like, oh God, wow, he's just putting them on the table here now. It's like he's almost like it's inevitable. Just stop fucking around and give me what I want. And it's so ugly and ugh.
Yeah, I don't know. I never questioned, oh, is he trying to, like, he never felt like everything about him sets me on edge, but I don't know. Maybe it's the difference of the real world and the fairy tale world because I'd much rather I'll fight bully. I don't want to deal with Dave.
Yeah.
Like fuck that. I'll take my
Yeah.
chances with the monster.
Yeah.
I'd
Uh,
much rather take on the fairy tale monster. And maybe that's kind of the point why you've got such contrasting stories. Like they're both Bones and his mom are trying to fight to save what they believe in. They're just doing it in really different ways. I don't know. I've watched it a couple times and I really, really like the movie. I love the Bones half of the story. And now I think it's coming more together for me because the Billy story just felt really disconnected for me. I just couldn't I had a hard time. It was interesting, and I mean, there were parts of it that were terrifying, but it just kind of felt like, why are these two stories together?
Hmm.
What am I missing? And I think maybe that's what I was missing.
Yeah, I think it's
That
all
we
that.
have to face the real world too. You can't just fight the monsters in your head.
Yeah, but also once you face the monster, once he beats the monster, she's able to beat Dave, right? I mean, whether or not
Right,
they're actually saying that, that's the way it's edited to that's the lesson, kind of.
right, because that scene is so cool too, where you've kind of got the parallel stories happening at the same time.
Yeah.
He's Bones is going down into the underwater city. She's going down into the shells. Then he sees a glimpse of the underwater dinosaur dragon. Then we get Dave doing his shimmy shimmy ya, and then they both slay their demons or monsters. As for Kat, the Eva Mendes character, I don't know. I feel like she was kind of. I mean, I don't think she's a bad person. I don't think she's a good person either.
Okay.
I think. I mean, there's a point where Billy asks her if she's getting a commission. Like, she's getting a commission. She's. I mean, maybe she's making the best of a crappy situation, but she's found a way to make herself into the queen bitch. So she's taking a cut, and nobody's telling her what to do. She's calling the shots.
Well, Dave is telling her what to do
Right.
to
But
some
only
degree.
Dave.
Yeah, and only Dave. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, you're right.
Everybody else is listening to her.
Yeah, she's queen bitch. Yeah, you're right.
So she, I don't know, found a balance between, you know, how to deal with Dave. Maybe she gives him what he wants, and he gives her what she wants then. And she
Undoubtedly.
gets more
That's
freedom.
Yeah, we don't even need to see that relationship elaborated on in the film to know that's exactly because there's nobody that'd be working for Dave that isn't going to give him what he wants.
Mm-hmm. But I guess in giving him what he wants, he rewarded her because she's keeping his business thriving.
Yeah,
I mean, the people are lining up to see Cat kill herself every night on stage in the most overdramatic, bloody way possible.
yeah. Let me ask you, what do you think? So Rita Katib, Rita, Reda, plays the cab driver. There is
Okay.
a scene that always slips through the cracks with me. And I feel like there's a voiceover from something else going on, or maybe music, and you see him with either his family or friends. And it's very brief, and it's apropos of nothing. There's nothing that leads into it, there's nothing that leads out of it. Otherwise, he just exists to drive Billy back and forth to the club, right?
But he leaves with her at the end.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. So, do you read the ending as the cab driver and Billy have found something in one another? Bones and Rat have found something in one another, and then there's young Frankie, obviously. Do you read the end as they all drive away and like build a life together?
Yes.
Okay, that's how I totally read it. I don't know that I even had even ever thought of it before, other than they both beat their demons, right? Their dragons.
Right. Yeah, they both beat their dragons, and in the meantime, while building up to face their dragons, they found somebody who was in their corner who gave them strength. And we definitely see that with Rat and Bones. I think I didn't think about it, but I was aware that it was there with Billy and the cab driver. I just kind of forgot. Um, but I definitely think it's supposed to they're supposed to parallel each other. So they both found somebody who gives believes in them and helps them find the strength within themselves, and now they can let go of now that they've faced their monsters, they can let go of everything that was holding them down and move into the next chapter
Right.
of their lives. Because I mean, we don't get any background really on the cab driver except that little montage you're talking about. Um, and maybe it was I kind of took it as they were telling us that he lost he lost his family and now he's finding a new one.
Yeah.
I mean, and he always from the beginning he was like the one person that is genuine and
Yeah.
kind with Billy and doesn't have an ulterior motive or want something from her. Everybody else wants something.
And I think he also is important in that like if we're if we roll through with that theme of like post capitalism or whatever, or like his speech about, before I came to this country, people tell me like, oh, you go there, there's money everywhere. You just catch it like on the ground or whatever. And he basically like that's obviously not the fact.
Right.
And I think there's something about like the way that they all come together. It's beyond like we're gonna leave this place and start fresh and not necessarily worry about these things because we have one another. And like there's like other things that matter. Um I don't know, it's funny. Like I hadn't really noticed his character very much in previous viewings, but he really by absence stuck out to me this time because he ends up playing such kind of an important role and he's not really there that much.
Well, I mean, he's there. He drives her every day. We see him all the time. He just you don't think about him.
Yeah.
And that sometimes that happens. There's people we interact with all the time at work and whatnot that we don't think twice about until something happens that makes them more visible. He was always there. She just didn't notice him.
That's
She had
brilliant.
too much other stuff going on. Her life
That's
was too
brilliant.
loud.
That's why we don't see him too, because we get the same thing that she gets. We get the thin slice. That's I totally miss that. That's fucking wonderful.
All of her, honestly, I mean, most of, again, I'm not, it's, I'm warming up to that side of the movie as we discuss it. I don't connect with Billy very well at all. The scenes I like best with her are the ones where she's interacting with the cab driver and they're just driving to and from work having conversations.
God damn, what a great movie.
I mean, those basic human interactions with the cabbie make it like they make her feel real.
Yeah.
And I mean, I we don't notice him, but I like that when we do notice him, they all kind of drive into the sunset together. And
Yeah.
I like to just imagine that, now they're and life's an open road. Now they're gonna go find a new adventure, and hopefully this one will be kinder to them than Lost River and Bully Town.
Yeah.
But
Oh man.
I mean, Bones slayed the dragon that is Bully, so he can probably face anything at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And I love how, like, throughout that part of the story, whenever we do get those minor interactions with other people who talk about Bully, they're telling all these crazy stories, and you don't know which ones are true and which aren't. But they're making him sound like the biggest monster ever. And then, and then you meet Face, who has no lips, and it's like, oh, they weren't exaggerating.
Yeah.
This guy, this guy really is that bad. I don't know. It feels like there's so much there's so much thought put into every aspect of this movie and the creating their own contained little world.
Yeah. It's very contained. And they break out.
And they break out. And it's I mean, I guess it's not only do they break out, but they all leave together. So
Yeah.
I mean, they've been fighting their battles alone, but now they're coming together. So Bones doesn't lose his family after all, and actually expands his family
Yeah.
because he and Rat find each other, and then his mom and the cab driver find each other, and they all live together. So it actually kind of has a happy ending.
Yeah, it totally does. Totally. The dinosaur head mounted on the top of the car. Like,
Hell yeah.
the dragging pulling the dragon's severed head through the middle of the medieval village.
Well, and I mean, they've got it mounted on top of the car, so I mean, probably with the idea that it'll scare away anything that drive away future monsters.
Yeah.
Like displaying the heads of beasts on pikes and things. He's got this big dinosaur head mounted to the top of the car, and it's probably like, well, no, my favorite scene in the movie is that underwater scene when he cuts the dinosaur's head off.
Yeah.
But
Mine too.
that the mounted dinosaur is really cool. Um, there's a lot of really cool scenes that just kind of sear into your brain. Like that opening scene when we first see Bully Town and Bully riding around on the mounted seat on the
Yeah.
back of his car like he's the king of New York.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
I'm the king of New York. I'm a number one. Um, yeah, that scene. I love the scene when we get the fire and all the colors of the fire that's eating Rat's house. Um, but the sky behind it is so dark that the oranges just like they're so vibrant it looks like a dream.
Also, I didn't know this till just now. As a closing thought, I would just like to give a shout out to the director of the cinematographer, director of photography, um, Benoit Debie, who also works with Gaspar Noé a lot and did Enter the Void and Vortex and Lux Eterna, and then also did Harmony Korine's Spring Breakers, which makes perfect fucking sense to me that he would have worked with Harmony Korine. Well, okay, that's Lost River for the Horror Vision presents Elements of the Horror. I'm Shawn,
And I'm Missy.
and we will be lost in the trees until we see you.